my channel and welcome to another video. I hope you guys are still doing okay out there, and I hope you guys are getting as amazing weather as we are here in the UK. It is absolutely glorious. So today is 4 weeks since my last Project Reverse video, which means that it is time for an update, and you guys, it is going to be a good one, if I do say so myself. I feel like I'm finally starting to get a really good understanding and a really good picture what eczema is, what causes it, what are the different factors that are involved that perhaps were initially I was thinking of them in isolation, but now I'm bringing them together, and that's been one really good thing about this time in self-isolation. I've had so much time to kind of get my head into the research, and now what I can do is really start to put together what I've learned from sort of a scientific perspective, as well as what I know about my own skin and what my experience has been. So if you guys are anything like me and you're the kind of person who just really likes answers to things, not just kind of vague guidelines, then stick around for the end of the video because I think that you will enjoy this one. So first of all, I thought I should just give you a very thorough update. As you can see, what my skin looks like. So I'm not wearing any makeup at the moment. That's not true. I am wearing a little bit of makeup on this spot right here. Probably shouldn't have pointed that out to you because that was the whole point of wearing concealer. So as you can see, if you compare to some of the videos that I made just a few weeks ago, where my eye was like, had reacted like crazy for some reason. If you compare it now, it's so much better. It is a little bit dry, especially in the corners here. I should also mention that I'm not wearing any moisturizer or any face oils, and I did just recently jump out of the shower, so my skin does tend to be like a little bit dry after I've just showered. Then also you can see around my lips are so much better. They're not itchy at all. They are still a teeny bit dry, but like I said, once I put some moisturizer and some face oils on it, they will be fine. My neck is doing much better than it normally is. Perhaps a little bit flaky, I don't know why, but not as itchy as it normally is. And then finally, my one area which is not getting much better, my hand. Other side is fine. And in terms of my body is completely fine. There's nothing there, except for I've started getting this tiny bit of eczema just here on the inside of my arm, which is somewhere that I have had eczema before. It's usually when I get a bit hot and a bit sweaty. But generally, I think my skin feels a lot better than it did when I first arrived into the UK. So I'm gonna go put some makeup on, make myself look presentable. Then we're gonna go outside because I think it's such a nice day that it would be nice to do a little bit of filming outside. And then I'm gonna tell you exactly kind of what happened in those last 4 weeks, which then led me to the research that I did and helped me to come up with my own theory as to what eczema might be. So if you haven't seen my previous videos on the Project Reverse, then I'm going to leave a link to the playlist down below in the comments section, so do go check those out. But my previous videos, I have been going through a spreadsheet. I'm not going to be doing that this time. Firstly, I've been pretty consistent. Secondly, I think the patterns are all kind of the same as the previous videos. You know, obviously there are some very obvious things that do bring back my eczema in terms of the food that I eat. But this time what I think has been the most interesting is that I've noticed certain environmental things that are definitely sort of bringing on eczema. So just wait for that plane to leave. So there's quite a lot of people walking around talking on the phone, so apologies if there is a bit of background noise, but focus on me. So a bit of a backstory. A few weeks ago I had to return to the UK because of the crazy lockdown that was in Dubai. I recently moved to Dubai, so when I was in Dubai, as everyone could kind of see, my skin was getting a lot better. My skin does really well in that kind of warm, quite humid air. And so when I came back to the UK, nothing pretty much changed in terms of my diet. Absolutely nothing. I still was very plant-based, I avoided sugar, all that kind of stuff. But I still got very severe eczema when I got back, which was super frustrating. Particularly, I got it on my neck, I got it around my eye, and I was just kind of going crazy with that. I was like, I do not understand what it is, what happens in the UK, in this flat in particular. And if you've been following my channel for a while, about 6 months ago, the same thing happened when we moved into this flat. Regardless of how good I was in terms of my eating and my lifestyle, my eczema was still pretty bad when I am in this apartment. So I was kind of racking my brain, really trying to figure out exactly what it was. Before I thought it was the humidity. It's been pretty warm at the moment, it's not humid at all. We even got some radiators, so it definitely wasn't that. So I thought it must be something else that I use very much on a regular basis. And then suddenly it just kind of clicked and I thought it must be the water. Now, The water in London is super, super, super hard. And I do know that the water does affect my skin. It definitely makes my skin drier, and it does affect my hair as well. Like, I've always had hard water, but then again, I've always lived in London. And last year when I was living in a different area of London, my skin was really, really good. And it happened to be the same area that I grew up in where my skin was really bad. So I'd never really sort of thought that it could be the water, because I've sort of firstly always lived in London, which I thought that it was just the same water supply everywhere, and secondly I've sort of lived in different areas of London, but sometimes it's been good and sometimes it's bad. So what I'm trying to say is I knew that the hard water is obviously drying on my skin, but I didn't actually genuinely think that it could be a cause to the eczema. I thought it was something else. Mostly I was pretty convinced that it was just something internal, but because I've been so consistent with my diet, because I've been so consistent with everything else, and the only thing that had changed was just the fact that I was back in the UK and the weather was really nice, I just thought we've got to try doing something about this water. So I bought myself one of these ionic shower heads, and I know lots of people are going to be thinking like, why haven't you done this before? And actually I have thought about doing it for so long, but for some reason I just put it off because I thought it would be such a big complicated process to get a new shower. Like, I thought you'd need to get some like massive filter to it, but not at all. It cost £20 from Amazon and it was so easy to put on. It took me 5 minutes, and I'm not joking, that's right. My skin has cleared up amazingly well, especially around my face. I've also been pretty good at kind of not washing it too often, obviously because we're not wearing so much makeup, and because of that, you know, I haven't needed to wash it too much anyway. But of course the one place that I, you know, still have really bad eczema is my hands. And what are we doing at the moment? We are all washing our hands, and I have been trying to sort of go to the shower to wash my hands as much as possible, but every now and again I do kind of forget to do that, or it's just not convenient at that time. If it is the water, which I think it is, then it's not too surprising then that the skin on my hands is still taking a longer time to heal. But I am trying my best now to just use the shower head water as much as possible. If you are also somebody who is in a city with very hard water, or just in a place with very hard water, and you feel like, you know, you've been really good with your diet and your lifestyle a really long time, but for some reason things aren't really quite clicking into place, I really, really, really do recommend trying that as well, because it seems to be making a big difference. Obviously it's still not 100%, like I said. I think there's lots of other factors that are involved, and your skin takes a long time to heal, so you know, you might not see differences straight away, but I definitely think, you know, again, it was so cheap and it was so easy to get this, and I just think, you know, just try it. Like, if you are still struggling, then definitely do try it. So another thing that also happened these past 4 weeks is I have had quite a lot of work stress, and work stress does on occasion kind of bring out eczema. And then it's funny because when I can always tell when it is coming from kind of like an internal imbalance, and because the eczema does firstly kind of look and feel a bit different, it's kind of becomes like little raised bubbles under my skin, and secondly they come out in different areas. So I kind of get it on my legs and on my bum. It's where I tend to get eczema when it's from internal, but most of the time I don't have it. It's just that when I know if I'm very stressed or if I've had lots of sugar or something like that, it's coming from inside, then those are kind of the areas that I tend to get it, as well as all these other areas. So it's all well and good now. You know, I've done 3 months of this Project Reverse, and at the moment, you know, there hasn't been anything like crazy revelations, other than perhaps, yes, it isn't just to do with what you are eating and what you're putting in your body. There's other factors involved as well, but this is something that I had kind of established a little while ago anyway, after doing some reading about the potential missing gene of something called filaggrin in people who have eczema and their skin barrier. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link to that up here, so that now that I have all the kind of information and the data that I need to show, okay, this is obviously has a direct link for me in terms of what my skin is impacted by, I then wanted to have a look at it, and I really wanted to try and understand, okay, but exactly why does that happen? Like, what is the actual mechanism? Because, you know, as a pharmacologist, I do love a good mechanism. So let's go back upstairs, let's go back to my computer, and I can show you what I have found. Oh, no. And so this then led me to thinking about how can I use my own data and the things that I have collected from my own experience doing this kind of Project Reverse and keeping a record of everything, and linking that together with the things that I have found in the scientific literature. So just to recap, if you haven't seen any of these, the things that came out of that in terms of things I'm eating are sugar, lack of sleep, stress, coffee, and eggs and dairy. Oh, and alcohol, of course. We've established these, but like I said, there are obviously also external things that are at play here as well, like we have just realized with the hard water. So I had a look at those 2 things. separately and independently. So first of all, I looked at the internals, and there is a theory called the leaky gut theory, which is something I'm sure lots of you are familiar with, but if those of you who aren't familiar with it, it is essentially when you have an increased permeability, i.e. more things can move in and out of the gut lining, so your large intestines, and this means that larger molecules and things that aren't necessarily supposed to be passed into your bloodstream go into your bloodstream and cause some kind of allergenic effect and inflammation in your skin. This leaky gut theory is not something that's just discussed in the world of eczema and the potential cause of eczema, but it's also potentially a cause for all sorts of different autoimmune disorders. So autoimmune disorders are disorders where it is symptomatic of a lot of very strong inflammation in your body, either in a certain organ part or all over somewhere. These are things like celiac disease, Crohn's disease, IBS, autoimmune hepatitis, there's multiple sclerosis. Autoimmune disorders are very, very serious disorders, and they often don't have a root cause. Some people even think that autoimmune is not a true statement. It's basically what that's saying is that your body is attacking itself, when a lot of scientists think that actually the body isn't attacking itself. There is a cause to why it does have these inflammatory reactions. It's just that we don't know what that is. Like, for example, eczema. Now, some scientists don't think that the leaky gut theory is true, and there's a lot of articles as well that are talking about debunking the leaky gut theory, but there is a lot of evidence to suggest that actually, yes, it is true. So 2 studies that I found that I thought was super interesting. One of them is that they did actually do a study on a group of people with atopic dermatitis. Remember, atopic dermatitis means that it is something that is chronic and usually something that has happened from birth and doesn't seem to have a cause to it, unlike contact dermatitis, for example. What they did is they tested these groups of people against control, i.e. people who didn't have any skin problems, and yes, they did find that they did have a higher gut permeability, and they tested this through looking at the ratio between different types of sugar molecules that they asked the subjects to drink, and then they measured it in their urine. There's definitely significance in the permeability of those who had atopic dermatitis compared to those that didn't. Then also another group of scientists, they took this one step further and they looked at this group of people who had atopic dermatitis and essentially ranked them in terms of their severity of the symptoms, and they looked then at the degree of permeability, so how much more or less permeable these people's gut were, and it did actually seem to have quite a nice correlation in terms of, like, the more clinically severe your eczema was, the more permeable their gut was. Similarly, the less severe their eczema was, the less permeable their gut seemed to be. Now, the thing that is kind of confusing the whole matter is that a lot of studies have been done on elimination diets and what that link is to eczema. So elimination diet is essentially when you're kind of getting rid of everything in your diet and you're having a very, very bland diet, eating that and then seeing what that does to your eczema. So they've done this study on quite a large group of people, and that has actually shown that it doesn't seem to have much of a link between those who went on an elimination diet. I don't know whether their symptoms improved or not. There didn't seem to be much of a significant difference in those 2 groups. So the 2 theories kind of don't really link, because you would think that if, you know, one group kind of stops eating everything that could potentially have an allergen, then their skin would obviously get better. However, what that study did not think about was that there could be other factors involved that could be causing their eczema as well. Because whenever I hear that, whenever I have heard doctors, and this is something that a lot of doctors have told me, that they say there is no link between what you eat and your eczema. Every time they have said that to me, I just think you're obviously somebody who does not have eczema. Because in my experience, the severity of my eczema symptoms have everything to do with what I'm eating. And even anecdotally, I have found that most people do find there are certain things that, of course, make their eczema better or worse. So the link between diet and eczema, for me, is not even a question. Like, there is, of course, a link between the 2. Okay, so now that we've kind of explored the leaky gut theory, and obviously it's not very clear cut, it's a little bit confusing. Sorry if I'm rambling loads, by the way, but I just get so excited. So the second thing that we want to look at is the skin barrier. So there's quite a lot of evidence now to show that people who have eczema tend to have a skin barrier dysfunction that is caused by some mutation or a lack of the gene that produces filaggrin. I don't know if I pronounce that right, but I think that's right. This is then causing something called a leaky skin barrier. So we've got the leaky gut barrier and we've got the leaky skin barrier. So similar to the leaky gut theory, the leaky skin barrier theory is essentially where they think there is some kind of dysfunction in the barrier of your skin, which means that a lot more allergens, bacteria, things that can cause irritation and inflammation in your skin are being let in when they should be kept out. In addition to having imbalances in your pH levels in your skin, remember your skin is actually naturally a little bit acidic, and other things that are supposed to be a natural defense mechanism to the things outside of your body. So I thought that this was interesting, and I think it's quite interesting as well if you look at them together, that it seems to be barriers to things that are external, the outside world. Both the gut barrier and the skin barrier are made of lots of epithelial cells, which is essentially just all the different cells that then makes up all the different layers. It could be perhaps a dysfunction in barrier epithelial cells for some reason. So then I wanted to think about other allergenic disorders that eczema are linked to, and these are asthma and hay fever. And if you think about it, these two are also some kind of disorder with barrier function, because asthma is caused by inflammation in your air, and that causes swelling and lots of mucus and difficulty to breathe. But again, it's external. It's like the air that's coming in, and then there must be a barrier between the airways and also your bloodstream. So that could be a barrier dysfunction, as well as hay fever. I know that when I get very sneezy, and again, it's about breathing things in and becoming very allergic to it in that way. So when I came to this realization that I think that eczema and allergenic disorders are a barrier dysfunction, and it's not just your skin barrier, but it's internal barriers as well, that is letting things come in, they're letting things get reactive and get itchy and cause inflammation. And that's why it's so hard to say, oh, it's exactly this or exactly that. There's so many different factors involved, because the barrier between the internal and external, there's lots of them. You know, there's the gut, there's the airways, there's the skin. But in terms of how we then use this information to manage our eczema, because it's all well and good having a theory, but like, how do we translate that into something that is practical and something that is actually helpful? So I think there's sort of 3 different things that we need to be thinking about at all times. Firstly, the internal state of inflammation. I talk about this all the time, but this is all about your diet and your lifestyle. So stress and diet, these are very key. These are things that are going to help to reduce your internal state of inflammation, and is much easier to control than the second thing, which is the external environment. So what are the things that are going on outside of your body in your environment that could potentially be causing your leaky skin barrier to let things in and cause inflammation and cause eczema? Harder to control, definitely harder to control. And it makes sense as well. I think a lot of people, when they go through like a natural healing journey, is that they find that they could have had a really good diet and looked after themselves for a really long time, but for some reason they're still not seeing any improvements, and then all of a sudden things will click into place. They'll go on holiday, or something will change, or for some reason all of a sudden within a week everything just kind of clears up. And I think that is what happens, is that when both the internal and the external come into balance, as in there's nothing being left in and causing inflammation on either side, either internally or externally, that is when your skin starts to heal. And when your skin starts to heal, the longer you can let it stay healthy and healed, I think that that is what helps to grow and strengthen your skin barrier. Because I think you guys will also find that you'll have patches of eczema. So I'll have certain areas that seem to be more sensitive, and that is probably why, because sometimes every now and again, you know, my skin might get a little bit better, but it's perhaps not healed all the way through. Remember, your skin is made of lots of different layers as well. So that's another reason why you have to be patient, because it's not just going to be the top layer that needs to improve, it has to be all the way through. And again, that is why you have to keep being consistent with your diet and also the external parts, because it's only when these two are together and then working together and working in harmony, and that is letting your skin repair itself until it's healed all the way through. And then all you need to think about is protecting it. So they're protecting it from the things that you know cause irritation, as well as you can use some moisturizers or some oils and things like that seem to really help. Now, the only question mark that I have had when I was looking through this is the fact that eczema and allergies are still a very recent phenomenon when we're looking relatively in terms of the history of humankind, and they're becoming more and more prevalent and more severe. And the question mark around that is why, like these barrier dysfunctions, why have they come up all of a sudden? Like, what is the reason behind that? So that's kind of, I guess, like my next little research topic that I will definitely look into. Oh my god, I feel like I've been speaking way too much. Maybe I should have made this 2 videos. So I hope you guys found that helpful, interesting, useful. If you have found that this makes sense and you think that this, yeah, there could be something in this, then definitely do leave a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts. Similarly, I'd love to hear if you think it's absolute tosh. Either way, I would love to hear from you. And if you like this video, do subscribe and give it a like, and I'll see you again very soon for another one. Bye.